then move to Amadeo. He's coming up next, and there is. It looks like we didn't get a link put in here. I can do. There's if you go to climatecoalition.org, that is another way to take action. There's an open letter there, climatecoalition.org, and a whole Save Indian Point website there, and it's a wonderfully written letter. Get your name on it. Join the hundreds of others who have. climatecoalition.org. Definitely do it. Amadeo is here. Fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and mute a few of these text boxes. Okay, so we can see what's going on. Amadeo, I didn't realize that the Northern Lights were so beautiful this time of year in Germany.
Well, not really. It's just a nice background to have.
Yeah,
so.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So it's very nice to be here at this, but it's a very sad occasion. I was already at both at Philipsburg in Germany when it was shut down, and Fessenheim. Very sad to see these things happen in many parts of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same. You've lost a few plants in Germany over the last couple of years, and I'm assuming they were just replaced by 100% wind and solar. Is that not the case?
No, that's not fully the case. In fact, there's another coal power plant that came online, Datteln 4. So it doesn't look at all like it's going to be. It's making a bit of progress. I mean, you see the emissions going down, but not by far as much as it should. And it's being made worse, of course, by the fact that nuclear power plants are being shut down.
Yeah. How did you first get involved with this issue? And because you haven't been a nuclear advocate your entire life, I don't think.
No, not at all. I mean, I've been very much involved in science versus pseudoscience for a very long time now. And climate change has become a bigger and bigger issue as time went on. My brother alerted me that 35 years ago, and at the time I didn't take the whole thing very seriously, but since about 15, 20 years I've been looking into climate change a lot. And one of the things that I then realized, because I never took nuclear power plants as a very good solution, I was more or less indifferent about it. But then I saw that by shutting down nuclear power plants, you're making things a lot worse. And the real danger of climate change is very big. And one of my slides shows a book by Mark Linus, 6 Degrees. I think that's something everybody should read. What's going to happen to the planet? Yeah. If you're going to have 2, 3, 4, or 5 degrees more, it's not just like a little change from going further south. It's a huge change to the planet.
Yeah. Well, why don't you let's get the slides going. I see you have a few here, and I'd love to hear a bit more.
Right. I think one of the things that we've seen that over the last 200, 250 years with the Industrial Revolution, of course, burning coal has also brought a lot of prosperity. But if you can move on to the next slide, can I use this as well?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what we have seen is that that the modern world and energy has brought us a higher life expectancy, less poverty, better standard of living, but the whole thing has come at a price, and that's what we've seen more and more. And the next slide would show that. The increase in the temperatures by burning coal, especially, and that is something that we really have to try to minimize, and that's been mentioned a couple of times here before, that we need to use all the means in our hands to try and stop that. And if we look at what are the options we really have here, it's shown in the next slide, which is from the IPCC. What can we do to reduce emissions? And there's a whole lot of options that we have here, and we see that all of them have a lot less emissions than coal or even gas have. And it's really depressing to see that coal is coming back online, our new power plants are being built in Germany, and that gas plants are being built in the United States. So I think this is exactly the wrong way to go. And nuclear power has just not been given the due it should have. And the German government, in fact, has not been doing a very good job of reducing emissions, but also they've been doing misinformation about nuclear power as well. As we can see as in one of the tweets that they had in the next slide, showing about trying to say that 18,000 victims of the earthquake were actually Fukushima victims. So they kind of mix these two things. And while the current debate is about whether the number of people killed through the nuclear power fallout is 0 or 1, there's just one case that is being considered right now, whether it really was a death because of the nuclear power plant is still debated. But this kind of information tries to spread fear, and that's unfortunately in Germany quite a problem. And that's one of the reasons that Germany is in the forefront of shutting down nuclear power plants. But worse than that, I think it is the problem that Germany not just shuts down nuclear power plants itself, but also intimidates other countries to do the same. And Austria is another country that follows the line as well. And if things go the way they are right now, Germany will close all its nuclear power plants in about 3 years and make the job of reducing carbon emissions even more difficult. And the only thing that I can hope is that we could come to other countries, maybe not taking the lead from Germany, because I think it's going to take much more time in Germany to change the mood than perhaps in other countries in Europe, like in Finland, where they are going to build new power plants. The UK is also much more liberal as far as this is concerned. And maybe, as was mentioned before, it's going to be East Asia that has to take the lead in this, and we might have to follow, which is not a nice thing, but that's the way things might turn out to be.
We collaborated together to put on the Nuclear Pride Fest in Munich a year and a half ago. I don't think we ever really connected afterwards, but I'm curious, what was the reaction that you saw within the media to the idea that you had 100 to 200 environmentalists in support of nuclear in the town square of Munich?
Right, and I think it did surprise quite a few people that there was a pro-nuclear movement as well, and that was pro-environment at the same time, because many people didn't expect that. And then, of course, there were the usual claims that this is going to be supported by the evil industry, nuclear industry, or something like that, which obviously wasn't. But it's also quite interesting to note that Germany wasn't always anti-nuclear. In fact, the Chancellor Helmut Schmidt, at the time of Jimmy Carter, he, after reading the Charney report about how the climate is changing and the kind of global warming that we expect, he clearly said that we need nuclear power, and talked of tackling the incompetence that was behind the opposition to nuclear power. But unfortunately, he was ousted from power, and building nuclear power slowed down and stopped. And well, we could at Germany be at the level of France, or even better. There are I guess we're going to hear also about the premature deaths that have been caused by the closure of nuclear power plants, both in Germany and Japan later on. And that was also mentioned by Ida, by the way. So I think that's it's not just about the future dangers, but also about people being killed today because they are through the particulate matter and things like that. There are thousands of people who die prematurely because of the extra coal and the gas that's being burnt. And the problem, I think, here also is that Germany is intimidating a lot of other countries not to build nuclear power plants or even shut them down. And there's an ongoing debate inside the European Union right now as to whether to only fund clean energy if it is solar or wind, or whether nuclear should be included as well. It doesn't look good for nuclear at the moment, but we're doing our best to change that.
And I'm glad you are. I have a quick question. If I can sneak one in here. It's let's say that nuclear makes some major cost reductions and is able to provide power more economically. Would that make a big difference to the German government, you think?
Well, I think it's going to take a long time, and so I think there's got to be a lot of information to be provided, especially about against the misinformation that's being spread by many environmental groups about the dangers of nuclear power, and also the claim that there's no solution for the nuclear waste problem, and things like that. So that's exactly where we need to counter this kind of misinformation by providing information. And that's one of the things that the Ecomodernists are doing here, but there are also other groups, the pro-nuclear groups in Germany that are doing that. But it's going to be a long and uphill battle in Germany. And I think it would probably be something that if other countries show that it goes well, that maybe Germany will follow. Germany is not a leader, as is claimed very often in the environmental circles. It's a laggard.
Wow.
And this, by the way, this diagram here shows, this was a snapshot I took a couple of days back about how green the electricity production is in many countries in Europe. And you can see quite obviously Germany is nowhere close to countries like France or Sweden at the top. And some countries are lucky, like Austria, that have a lot of water, so they can have a lot of hydro power. But if you compare Germany with a lot of the other countries, it's not really doing well. I mean, of course, it has made some progress with solar and wind, but by far not as much as France did 20, 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if they had kept the plants and continued to build renewables, would they be pretty much there as far as decarbonized?
Well, I think it would have been even better if they hadn't stopped building new nuclear power plants in the 80s, because then we wouldn't be where Germany is now, but we would be where France is, or even ahead of them, because if we had both nuclear power and compensate some of the existing coal power plants with solar and wind, we'd be much further ahead.
Yeah, that makes sense. And now that I'm thinking about it, if they would have kept the nuclear plants and continued the large renewable build out, there would have been a lot of either ramping up and down of the nuclear plants involved, or a lot of curtailing of the wind and solar, and dumping that power, which, as we've seen in the United States, can, if a nuclear plant is forced to ramp up and down, that can be very challenging economically.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so, what can we do? What can we do from Germany? That's saying one is to keep on pointing out that Germany is not a leader. It's not a role model in combating climate change, and also some of the false claims around Fukushima and Chernobyl, which also Ida pointed out earlier, that things are not as they are very often portrayed to be. And especially stop Germany and Austria from intimidating other countries, or at least let them go ahead and build nuclear power plants. And Germany, and for example, even Austria is trying to prevent the Czech Republic from building nuclear power plants, or trying to slow them down. So that's another issue, I think, where we will be putting some of our effort in here in Germany. And then again, of course, showing positive examples of where things have gone well with reducing emissions a lot, like France, as far as the electricity production is concerned, has almost no emissions. I mean, most of the emissions, I mean, it does have emissions, but it doesn't come from electricity power generation.
And is it 5 reactors remaining in Germany now?
It's 6.
6.
It's 6 now.
6 after Philipsburg.
Yeah.
Do you think
closed down.
Do you think we have a shot at saving any of those, or do we have to wait for the next generation to see atoms split in Germany again?
I'm very pessimistic. I mean, I'm willing to be surprised, but this is so deep in the culture in Germany that it's going to take a long time. And so I think countries like Finland or the UK, France, perhaps even the United States have got to take the lead here to at least change the tides a little bit. But as I see in the US, you also have the same kind of problem as well with Indian points. So it's not just a German problem, but so it's going to be a hard fight for all of us.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for sharing the German experience here. I'm hoping that we can learn from the lessons of Germany and not repeat the same mistakes they've been making, and instead maybe look to some of the countries that have successfully decarbonized already as a blueprint.
Right.
Yeah.
And they've done it very fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What, 12,
I mean,
15 years?
I mean, Germany has taken 20 years to get where it is with solar and wind, and that's not very far.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you once again. I'm just going to scan for any quick questions we have, and I'm sad. Our second climate scientist of the day, Dr. Korecha, is having some audio struggles. I'm trying to troubleshoot that, but we might not be able to. I don't know. But again, thank you. I'm going to see any questions for Amadeo. Oh boy. Okay, nothing directly relevant here. Great. Well, thank you. If we have some later, I'll certainly follow up with you. Appreciate that. Awesome. I see waiting in the wings, we have a Baba Brinkman